time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set.
Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle. Once again, it is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400, the Midlands, and around the world. On the iHeart Radio application, loaded show today. Clemson Tom, Tommy Bowden, hoping to get up with our buddy Luke Winstall, and we'll re-rack a good portion, a heavy portion of our interview that we did with Tim Bourret as the Tigers are on the precipice, on the heels of venturing in to Notre Dame Stadium. Tomorrow night, 7:30, NBC, Clemson, 8-0, number 4 in the college football playoff rankings, 6-0 in the ACC. Ventures into an unranked Notre Dame venue as the Tigers will take on the Fighting Irish in South Bend. Clemson leads the all-time series 4-2, one of just 5 teams with a overall series lead against the Fighting Irish. Their last meeting, a 34-10 win by Clemson in the ACC championship game back in 2020 on December the 19th. Clemson Tom joins the program here on a Friday afternoon. CT, big weekend for the Tigers as they take on the Fighting Irish.
Yes. Finally, man. This is going to be a fun game. I'm pumped.
Are you more pumped because of the name Notre Dame? I mean, they're 5-3. It's been a bit of a disappointing season for them. I mean, Are they simply a team that when their name is on your schedule, you got to get hyped up for it?
Yeah, of course, man. I mean, this is just a 5-3. Let's just call them the South Bend University. And, man, we ain't going to really care. But the fact that it is Notre Dame, the fact that it's got that name recognition to it, it's a night game as well, you're going to pay a little bit more attention to it. That's just a fact. That's not, anything else. That is what it is.
Tom, Clemson comes in off of a bye week, and I think it's fair to say at this point we haven't seen this team play their best football. The first week of a season, you can have strange things happen because, it's the first game, there's fumbles, you're trying to get back into rhythm and sync of playing. That can also happen after a bye week too. I mean, do you think that this Clemson team will play much cleaner than they did the last time you saw them against Syracuse, even after having a week away?
I think so, man. We needed a rest for sure. So having that coming back in us, hopefully we don't come out a little sluggish. But we needed a break. We needed a rest. Everybody throwing everything at us. NC State played us tough. Florida State played us tough. Syracuse played us tough. And those bruises add up, man. You need those times where you can just sit back, sleep in. You don't have to be told where to be. You don't have to be told what to wear. You need that break. And it's Notre Dame. It's a night game. We need to play all 4 quarters. This whole year we'll play 2.5, maybe even 3 quarters, just to see what it is. But I mean, we got to have a full game, and I think we will.
What's been the biggest disappointment for you this season with this Clemson Tiger team?
The biggest disappointment is that we're not playing a full game. That's the biggest disappointment. We don't play a full game. I mean, other than that, we haven't lost. We make the adjustments, but we just don't play a full game.
I was listening to the radio today, making my way back to the house after work, and I don't tune into a lot of sports talk radio, but I did in this case just for a minute. Most of the time when my daughter's in the car, she's making me listen to Hits One. But prior to her getting in the car, I was listening to SiriusXM, and one of the hosts was saying the exact same thing I have said, basically about this Clemson team. And I haven't said it in so many words, but they look like a team that is going to make it to the college football playoff, Tom, given their schedule. But they don't look like a team that can win a game. Do you agree with that statement at this point?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we've been saying that for weeks now. And, yeah, we're going to make it to the playoffs, or at least we should. And if we don't, that's going to be a disappointment kind of a year for us. But, I mean, I even tweeted it out as soon as they announced the rankings. I'm like, does anyone actually think we can beat Tennessee? And some fans are like, absolutely. Yeah, we can, any day. Yeah, any given day. You're absolutely right. Any given day. But let's just go off the eye test. Could we beat Tennessee? I'm going to tell you no. Can we beat Alabama? I'm going to tell you no. Can we beat Ohio State or Georgia? I'm going to tell you no. From just the eye test, yeah, any given day, anything can happen. I could also win the lottery, and I can also knock out Mike Tyson. It's probably not going to happen, though. But, yeah, any given day. So just going off of that, we're probably going to go to the playoffs, and hopefully we play our best ball then. But any given day, brother, that's what everyone's been saying. But I don't think we're going to make it deep in the playoffs at all. If we make it past the first round, then that's something big for us for sure.
He's on Twitter at Clemson Tom. Tom, I'm going to take it to a different level for you then, because you've kind of walked right into a little bit of a topic I talked about yesterday. So I agree. Like you haven't really seen this Clemson team play to the standard that you would expect to beat even Tennessee. But of those teams you just mentioned, Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, outside of Michigan, I mean, I think Tennessee's the team you'd want to face at this point if you're Clemson, though. I think that's the team you're most likely to beat out of those six.
Oh, shoot, we could. I mean, but here's the thing. Yeah, we could beat any of those teams. We really could. We just haven't really looked the part. That's all I'm saying. We just haven't looked like Alabama is Alabama. They always look good. Tennessee came out, showcased it like crazy against Alabama. They had their best game ever. And then typically when a team does that, they kind of let it go a little bit.
Yeah.
And they played some like Middle Tennessee State or somebody the next following week. And you're like, all right, maybe they're not going to get up for that one. Nope. They went in there and they destroyed them. So there's a lot of different things that you just want to see. And we get up for games, but then we'll coast. Not the other good teams aren't going to coast. I would love to play Michigan. I think we could beat Michigan. I think we could beat TCU. But as far as the other four, I just don't see it, man. Because honestly, we could probably take Georgia after seeing how Georgia's been playing. I think at all the top four teams right there, I think Georgia would be the one that we could probably beat the most.
He's on Twitter at Clemson Tom. And again, the Tigers take on the Fighting Irish tomorrow at 7:30 on NBC. A lot of good national exposure for Clemson. The last time they were on that stage against the Fighting Irish, DJ Uiagalelei had a performance of a lifetime, threw for the most passing yards ever against Notre Dame. Tom, coming off of his worst game in 2022, you would believe that it benefits him to a degree, having played well at Notre Dame. Maybe not to the same degree as if the last time he was there, that venue was packed with fans, because it wasn't. But like shooters and guys who play sports, like you go into an arena where you scored 35 points the last time you were there, you're like, okay, I can shoot in this place. Do you think DJ is going to feel confident stepping into that environment for a second time in his career as a starter?
Yeah, I guess you could say it on that one. That's a tough.
That wasn't a confident. I got out of you there, Tom. That sounded like a more concerned.
Well, I'm concerned because I haven't seen. We keep going back to. I haven't seen 4 quarters. I've seen 2.5. I've seen 3. That's where the concern comes from.
Do you think that the defensive line in this game, they've underwhelmed this year? I think it's fair to say, and I brought this point up earlier in the week. This is a team in Notre Dame where the mindset and the conversations about how they are going to be successful is if they can rush the football. That's got to feed right into the belly of these Clemson Tiger defensive linemen, who probably recognize they haven't played their best game either.
Yeah, and honestly, I think they'll be the first people, the first group, or the first guys on the team that's going to say, look, man, we haven't played our best game all year. And I think we're going to beat Notre Dame just fine. I don't think their linebackers match up well with our offense. And I think we can stop them on the run. But I mean, there's even people that you'll say this is the game they circled. Notre Dame might have something for us on this game. This might be the game that we just don't get up for. And there's part of me has switched a little bit after seeing us against Syracuse, because to come back like the way we did against Syracuse, like, okay, man, we got a little bit of dog in us. Because I was questioning not necessarily the heart, but the toughness. Because it's what it's been looking like. It's like, yeah, I'm a 5-star kid. I should just show up and my talent should win the game alone. And that's kind of where my doubtfulness comes in with the team, because here pretty soon we're going to be facing guys that they're all 5 stars too, and they want to win, and they got a little bit of that meanness in them. I haven't seen that meanness quite yet, and we saw it a little bit against Syracuse, which I love, and hopefully maybe that kind of triggered us. Maybe that got us back into focus. Like, all right, we're going to come out and start playing. But when it comes to Notre Dame rushing the ball, we're going to shut them down just fine. They're going to get their few plays here and there where he's going to break off on a big one, or 15, 20 yards or something like that. But overall, we're gonna shut Notre Dame down against that run game.
He's on Twitter at Clemson Tom. He joins us every Friday to give us the fans' perspective. Tom, back in 2017, Georgia went up to South Bend, Indiana. They came away with a 20-19 victory, but that's not what was impressive. What was impressive about that game, if you go back and watch it, is the number of Georgia fans in that venue. Clemson fans were supposed to play at Notre Dame in 2020. The Tigers did. Fans didn't because of COVID-19. Right. Do you expect that stadium tomorrow night to be, not just sprinkled with orange? Do you think Clemson fans can do what Georgia fans did, which was essentially turn that thing into a semi-home game? I mean, there were so many Georgia fans, the stadium was red. Can Clemson turn that place orange?
We could. I don't know I haven't really seen anything on social media about people traveling. I haven't seen anything like that. But we always travel well. I mean, that's the good thing about Clemson is no matter what, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it big. The only time I ever saw us not travel well was in the playoffs against Ohio State. We had about 20% of the stadium. But by the third quarter, we were 100% of the stadium because they just left in droves. It was a beautiful sight because I despise Ohio State. I honestly think Notre Dame's going to pack it out more than us because they beat us last time. It is Clemson. You got to remember who we are now. We're not little old Clemson like Dabo likes to say. We're up there. We're the top 4 in the country right now. Notre Dame wants to knock us off. They want to be the team that says, yeah, we beat Clemson. Yeah, we're 5-3, but we beat Clemson. So we are we're their Super Bowl at this point. That's what we got to understand. And we know we are. So when you think about it like that, we'll be just fine.
Tom, I know you follow me on Twitter. I don't know how much you keep up with the things I tweet. Do you know how many teams in the history of college football have played Notre Dame 5 or more times that have a winning record against the Fighting Irish?
I have not seen this, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me.
Yeah, I am. Do you want to venture a guess? Now, again, I'll phrase the question again.
Guess?
Yeah.
I mean,
hold on. Let me phrase the question. Let me phrase the question. How many teams in college football that have played Notre Dame 5 or more times have a winning record against the Fighting Irish?
I'm going to go with 2, USC and Clemson.
It's 5. Clemson, Florida State, Michigan, Nebraska, and Ohio State.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's the top teams that they play.
That's you know what? I mean, I know some people are listening going, what are you guys talking about with Nebraska? They haven't been worth 10 cents in 20 years. But the point is that those are the blue bloods of college football outside of Clemson, who's just now put their name into that conversation with this recent run, right?
Say that one more time. You broke up.
I'm sorry. I said those, Ohio State, Nebraska, Michigan, and Florida State. I mean, those are the blue blood programs of college football. I mean, and Clemson obviously has kind of earned that as well based off of what they've done under Dabo Swanny. So, I mean, if you're chopped liver, you haven't beaten Notre Dame, basically.
Sorry to cut you off. Here's the funny thing about Clemson is when it comes to Notre Dame, they don't play a lot of big name teams like they say they do. They're always like, oh, we're Notre Dame, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but we ain't Navy. Y'all play all these like low level teams, but every time you play a big team like an Ohio State or Florida State or Clemson, you've got a losing record to them. So that's one thing that I despise about Notre Dame is they claim they're the best. But then if you look at their track record, anytime they play like a blue blood, they got a losing record to them. That's one of the things that drives me nuts. Oh, yeah, great job. You beat Purdue, who's never really been anything except for when Drew Brees was there. When's the last time you ever played Purdue and you got worried? I'll wait because it probably never happened. That's why, like, Notre Dame and all their pomp and circumstance, it's trash, man. Y'all were great when my great-grandpa was alive. He ain't been alive for a while, and you ain't been that good for a while, so deal with it.
Yeah, if you put it like this, I think for Notre Dame fans, their last major bowl win was 1994 in the Cotton Bowl.
Remember the last time they were in the Cotton Bowl?
Yeah, I remember that one well. So it's been a long time, I think, since Notre Dame's won a bowl of significance. Actually, that might be wrong. I'm going to double check that. That list looked a little short, but anyway, I'll double check it here and let everybody know.
Bowl. I don't know. It sounds about right. They haven't been good for a while. I mean, that's why Kelly left.
Yeah, I'm looking now for like a Power 5 bowl game win. Yeah, 1994 versus Texas A&M. They won 24-21 in the Cotton Bowl. But even that then wasn't one of the Big Six bowl games like it is now. That's 30 years. 1992, 30 years ago, they won the Sugar Bowl. That's been a while, Tom.
That's just sad. And Rudy was offsides.
Rudy was offsides. Go get the T-shirts now on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. All right, final couple of things with Clemson Tom here. He's on Twitter at Clemson Tom. Tom, I don't know. I know you're a busy man with work and family. Did you get a chance to hear DJ Uiagalelei this week?
No, what did he say?
Well, not that he said anything in particular. It's the way he said it, the way he sounded. Tom, he's always been a little bit too laid back for me. I've always thought, there's even like that meme of him where he's drinking like the people have a picture of him drinking out like a, what I'm talking about.
Exactly what
Yeah. So this week he sounded like Trevor Lawrence to me. And I think that's a scary thing going into this game, not for Clemson, but for his opponents. He was laid back, but sounded more confident than I'd ever heard him.
Just that, like, I'm going to come get you. Just don't worry about it. Just snap the ball kind of thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think when we get off the phone here, you ought to go, dig it up. It's over on our YouTube channel and just listen to him. He sounds like it's all business. And I think that's a positive because, I think that's what he needs. And that's what this team needs. They need that type of leadership as well.
Yes, he does. So you're meaning to tell me it was like you're like teasing like your cousin or somebody that's a little bit older, maybe even a little bit younger, and you're in the car with your parents, like, wait till you get out the car. And you're just calm, cool, collected, but internally there's like a little flame brewing. Is it kind of like that? Like, all right, wait till we get in the car.
Yes.
Wait till we get to the bus stop.
Yes,
wait till
it sounds like
one of those things.
It sounds like his butt hitting the bench in that Syracuse game maybe lit a little spark inside of him. It might be a positive for the Tigers this weekend. Again, 7:30 on NBC. You can follow along with Clemson Tom during the game. I'm sure he's on Twitter at Clemson Tom. CT, hit him straight. Tell my man Xander play good. And we will talk to you next week, brother.
Thanks, brother. Have a good one.
There he is, Clemson Tom here on a Friday afternoon. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, be a part of the program anytime. Coming up, we're going to hit a break. We'll come back. We'll dive into our conversation we had with legendary Clemson SID Tim Bourret. It was yesterday here on the program, but you can't talk about the Tigers and the Fighting Irish without diving in deeper with Tim Bourret. We'll give you a couple of segments of that, and then Tommy Bowden in hour number 2. Stay with us. Rocking and rolling along on a Friday afternoon. Yesterday, we got a chance to catch up with legendary Clemson SID Tim Bourret. He's, of course, on the call with Don Munson tomorrow, heading up to South Bend, Indiana for that game against the Fighting Irish. And Tim's a Notre Dame graduate. He's worked at Clemson for 40 years, and certainly you can't go into this game without talking about Tim Bourret. Man, I know this game is so special for you.
Well, it certainly is. A lot of people say, do you enjoy this game? And I do enjoy the game, especially broadcasting it, just because I know the teams, both teams so well. I know the history of both teams. So for me, it's a lot of fun to do this game.
Well, I think about the last time you guys went up to Notre Dame for that game. Obviously, it was the COVID-19 season. The fans weren't really able to be a part of it the way people would have liked. I think you were maybe giving Dabo Swanny or Don Munson, maybe everybody, some tours around campus. But take me back to a 17, 18-year-old Tim Bourret arriving at Notre Dame as a freshman. What was that first, couple of days like? I know you'd been to the campus, I'm sure, based off your family's history and things you've told us in the past. But what was it like for you just, kind of being the freshman there in South Bend?
Well, I got off to a rough start. I played in the American Legion World Series in Lewiston, Idaho, which in those days went kind of long. And so we didn't finish our season until after the first couple of days of school. My father actually went through registration for me at Notre Dame. I think he got a big kick out of it. A lot of people looked at him awful strangely, like he was a pretty old freshman. But he had a lot of fun with it. But then I got to school, and I was kind of run down after all the traveling and stuff we did. But finally, I got enough rest and caught up, and I was there for a great first year. Notre Dame in football went undefeated, beat Southern Cal at home in mid-October, won the national championship, and then started out undefeated and ended UCLA's 88-game winning streak. So, by middle of January, my freshman year, Notre Dame was number one in football and number one in basketball at the same time, which I'm not sure if that had ever happened before. So, I had a great freshman year, great start to that. But I was just a regular student. I didn't discover sports information until my junior year.
Well, and that's what I was going to that's exactly my next question for you. You've mentioned your relationship with legendary sports information director at Notre Dame, Roger Baldessari. And I was going to say, so how did you get into, the sports information side of things?
Well, yeah, this may be a good lesson for young people out there. My father had a chance meeting with Roger Baldessari in the summer of 1975. My father was one of those guys who represented Notre Dame at college fairs in the state of Connecticut, and they had a seminar that he went to, and had a mutual friend with Roger Baldessari. So they had breakfast one morning, and my father said, "Man, Tim would really love working in that office." So he asked him about if he had students, and he said he did. And so I wrote Roger a letter in the summer of 1975 and told him that I was, coming back from my junior year and that I'd work as a volunteer. And I already committed that I would work in the summer because I wanted to take 6 hours of summer school, so I didn't have to take 18 hours in a semester. And so that extra time, and years later, when I looked through the file, Roger had written on the top of it, "Let's hire this guy. Sounds like he'd be a good summer slave." Because no one in the sports information office would work there in the summertime. And so I was offering to work in the summer. So that's kind of how I got the job. I guess my point being that I committed to do something that would set me apart from anybody else who applied. So that's kind of how I got my foot in the door.
Unbelievable. Tim Bourret, again, on Twitter at Tim Bourret. Go follow him. Clemson SID, and he'll be on the call. Former Clemson SID, he'll be on the call with Don Munson this weekend, Reggie Merriweather, as well as the Tigers venture up to the hallowed grounds of the Fighting Irish there at Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend. And, I think that's the thing that always sticks out about this school, right? Whether they're 5-3, whether they're 8-0. I mean, it is a name that is timeless in this sport. It is a name that resonates, the uniforms, the storylines. And so for Tiger fans, I know plenty of them that are making the trek up this year because of not being able to go 2 seasons ago. And I guess, Tim, that's going to make this even more special for those fans who have never been up to South Bend for a matchup.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this is the first time since 1979 that Clemson fans basically have been able to go to a game at Notre Dame Stadium. The only Clemson people who got to go to the game in 2020 were the parents, brothers, sisters, other relatives of the Clemson players. Now, the Notre Dame students got to go if they tested negative for COVID, and it seemed like every one of them did for that game because you saw them run on the field at the end of the game. It looked like every student in the school was actually in the stadium. But, yeah, it's going to be a great atmosphere. Notre Dame having won 5 of the last 6. And with a new coach, I think Notre Dame people are excited. They're excited about, what it would mean for the program for them to beat the 4th-ranked Clemson Tigers. Clemson was number 1, of course, going into that game in 2020. Had a 36-game regular season winning streak that Notre Dame snapped. And, of course, they're famous for breaking streaks. And now Clemson can turn around and return the favor because Notre Dame's won 26 straight regular season games against ACC teams. They haven't lost to an ACC team in the regular season since Miami hammered them in the 2017 season. So that should add a little bit of spice to it.
That, again, is legendary Clemson SID Tim Bourret as Clemson and Notre Dame face off on Saturday. We'll hit a quick break, 803-450-0086. We'll come back with some more from Tim Bourret. Plus, hour number 2, Tommy Bowden joins the program. I don't know this question. I don't know that we've ever asked Tommy Bowden this. We're going to ask him today, though. Has he ever been to a game at Notre Dame Stadium, or has he ever coached in a game against the Fighting Irish? I honestly don't know. I mean, Bowden's had stops at Duke and Kentucky and Alabama, etc. Has he ever faced off with the Fighting Irish? We'll find out in hour 2. Stay with us. The show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk, Lawton Swan with you again. Yesterday, we had a chance to catch up with legendary Clemson SID, and I do mean it, man. Tim Bourret, I mean, his brain is something else when it comes down to the history of Clemson. Also, great history of Notre Dame, as he was a Notre Dame student and worked in that sports information department before coming to Clemson. And, Tim, what have you seen from them now that Drew Pine has had some time to kind of get into the rhythm of being the starting quarterback there? And ultimately, what do you think this game might look like? I know weather conditions on Saturday might be a little bit up for grabs in terms of whether it's going to be rainy or windy. But just in terms of what you've seen from Notre Dame, I mean, how do you think they'll want to approach this game against Clemson?
Well, whether the wind's blowing at 2 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour, Notre Dame's going to want to run the football. That's what they're going to hang their hat on. That's what they've done the last couple of games. Quite frankly, Pine has had some problems the last 3 games. Over the last 3 games, his completion percentage is less than 50%. And that was coming off 2 really good games against BYU and North Carolina. North Carolina certainly the most impressive win Notre Dame's had this year. The only loss for the Tar Heels. They won that game 45-32, and North Carolina scored the last 2 touchdowns of the game to even get it within 13. So, they've quite frankly Notre Dame's played much better on the road than they've played at home so far this year, and the competition has been tougher on the road. And you could throw in that Ohio State game. They only lost 21-10, and with 12 minutes to go, it was a 14-10 game. So, I think it's going to be a relatively low scoring game. I think Notre Dame's got a pretty good defense that they can hang with Clemson, but both teams are going to want to run the football. The Tigers certainly with Shipley and Notre Dame with Estime, who's coming off a really good game against Syracuse.
Again, follow him on Twitter at Tim Bourret. And last night, Tim, I know you were at the basketball game as the Clemson Tigers were taking on Benedict. We'll circle back to football here. before we get you out, I know the Clemson Tiger basketball faithful among us will be excited to see this team this season. I think, not necessarily, what's the right word here? The most experienced, but the fact that Hunter Tyson returned, obviously once PJ Hall is healthy and can get back out there, they will have a group of guys that do have some serious experience. What did you see from them at this point? Again, it's a lot of youthful guys, but I think that they've got a chance, to make a little noise given what they can do on the interior with Hall when he's healthy. And then, of course, what you get from a guy like Hunter Tyson, just that versatility.
Right. Well, last night, Tyson had 19 points. I think in only 15 minutes, he hit 4 threes. And that's certainly going to be a key, him hitting threes and then getting a couple other guys to join in. Hemingway was 2 for 3, I think. Galloway, who had a great game against the Tigers last year for Boston College, he knocked down some shots last night. So that was certainly, going to be important. And, Clemson really does have some experience. When you look at Hunter Tyson's a 5th-year guy. Galloway's a 6th-year guy in college basketball. Hall will be in his 3rd full season. Hemingway is in his 4th season. Chase Hunter is starting at point guard, and he had a double-figure scoring game last night, and he's a 4-year guy. So, but you add in a couple of guys, Chauncey Wiggins and RJ. Both of them looked good. Were contributed last night. Wiggins had 10 points and 8 rebounds. So. And Josh Beadle from Columbia, he had a double-figure scoring game, shot 4 for 6. Really good driver of the basketball. I think when you see situations where Clemson needs to go the length of the court to score in a late-game situation, he's a guy who can create his own shot, and I think the ball might be in his hands at the end of the game, even though he's not in the starting lineup right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people maybe forgot about him because a year ago he had the red shirt, put on some good weight, though, and I think physically he'll be more adept to play in the Atlantic Coast Conference this season. So, again, that's just a quick look at Clemson's 91-45 victory over Benedict last night up at Little John Coliseum with legendary Clemson SID Tim Bourret with us. So, Tim, back to the football side of things, if you will. Dabo Swinney's press conference this week is just spectacular in so many ways. I absolutely love when he impersonates, his former head coach, Gene Stallings, there at Alabama. What did you make of the moment that Dabo went into the fact that the game is not played on paper?
Yeah, that's what he's given that performance before, and that's
it's so
that's
good.
something that he talks about, a lot. And he doesn't do the impression with his team because I don't think anybody on the team really knows who Stallings was as a coach and what he accomplished. Although Coach Stallings has been at Clemson games before, I don't think it's been within the last couple of years. But anyway, the point that he certainly is making is that you got to go out and do it on the field. How many 5-star guys you have or 4 stars guys you have is irrelevant. And actually, he always talks about how last year's stats don't play over to the next season, or what you accomplished in the last game doesn't roll over to the next game. And that's certainly another basic tenet that he got from Coach Stallings.
Again, that's Tim Bourret joining us here yesterday on the program. We'll wrap that interview up in the final segment of hour 1. Just a little bit left in that one. And then Tommy Bowden going to join us. We'll find out if he's ever coached at Notre Dame. I mean, he coached a lot of places. Excuse me. Let me say that the right way, because that made it sound like, was he ever a coach at Notre Dame? Yes, Swanny, why don't you go just YouTube it or look him up on Wikipedia or whatever. No, I mean, like, did he ever take a team, or was he ever a part of a team that went into coach at Notre Dame? So we'll find out about that coming up in hour 2. Also, I'll hope to get connected with Luke Winstel. He's on the scene in the Peach State, as he's got you covered on recruiting on our website. Put the .com on it, doggone it. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com, where $1 gets you 3 months of coverage. After that, $63.17 for 1 year. Plus, we'll take a look at the weekend that's looming in college football. Stay with us. Final segment of hour number one, the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk. Tommy Bowden coming up in hour two. We put a bow on our interview that we did yesterday with Tim Bourret as he's traveling up to South Bend, Indiana for this matchup between his alma mater and maybe the school he loves more. That's the thing we didn't ask him. Who do you love more? We didn't ask him that. We should have. We jump back into our interview with him right here on the Friday edition of Clemson Sports Talk. Well, and that may come into play for DJ Uiagalelei as he goes back to the place where he set the all-time passing mark against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The sentiment amongst some is that, hey, DJ will rebound from the way he played against Syracuse simply because he's playing in a place where he played so well 2 seasons ago. What did you make of his performance at that time, and how shocking was it to kind of see him maybe where he was a year ago, whether that's his performances on the field or maybe even between his ears, just, with his confidence?
Yeah, you're right. Certainly at the time. Now, of course, he had played against Boston College and thrown for over 300 yards against Boston College. But then to go for 439 against Notre Dame at Notre Dame Stadium Saturday night on national TV. Granted, the atmosphere wasn't that big because there were only 11,000 people in the stand.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised at what he was able to do. And then you're right. I mean, most people thought he would just pick up where he left off in 2011 and throw for 300 yards every game. But it's not that easy. And I do think starting out with Georgia last year was probably the worst thing that you could do, to go against the defense that was definitely the best in the nation last year and maybe the best college defense in a decade. When you look at, what are there, 8 guys in the NFL now from that Georgia team last year. So, with any quarterback, confidence is important, and hopefully what he did at Notre Dame a couple of years ago is going to bring back good memories. And while he didn't have a good game against Syracuse, I think the first 7 games he did very well and was fine, and it did what we needed to do for him to win, whether it be running the ball or throwing the ball. His passing efficiency the first 7 games was 148, which is solid, inside the top 40 in the country. And to show you how stats have grown offensively over the years, in 1983, Mike Epley's passing efficiency was 146, and that was 3rd best in the nation. Now 146 will get you about 43 or 44 in the nation.
That's incredible. That's awesome. Tim Bourret with us again. He's on Twitter at Tim Bourret. It'll be a big matchup, 7:30 on NBC. And, for me, Tim, watching Clemson on NBC is special because it's so rare. And I know maybe Notre Dame fans who have become accustomed to that, it doesn't stand out as much. But, last time they put on basically what I would label as it's almost a pregame Super Bowl kind of feel, the way they build it up and they do these little showcases and kind of share so much about the matchup in these teams. I mean, it's a big, I don't know if it's an advantage, I don't know if that's the right word, but, it really is significant. Here's Clemson, number 4 in the college football playoff, and they're going to be showcased to the country on Saturday night. Yeah,
without a doubt. Now, there are some other games that'll be going on, but people are interested in, these intersectional type games that, they're non-conference type games, even though they were in the same conference for the 1 year, a few years ago. But yeah, it is kind of special when you're on NBC, and they put a lot into it. I was talking to Ross Taylor today, and he said the producer earlier this week had sent him a list of different pictures or video that they were looking for that was 2 pages long. And Ross replied to him, "Are you producing the Academy Awards for this game on Saturday night?" So, but with NBC only doing 7 games right now, they put a lot into it. And of course, this game 2 years ago, the 2020 season, was the highest rated regular season game that season with a 10.7, rating. So I know NBC is hoping that they'll have a similar results. Of course, the LSU Alabama game, I guess, is going to be going on at the same time. I don't know if there was a great game opposite the Clemson Notre Dame game 2 years ago because you had fewer games because of the pandemic. But they certainly put a lot into it.
Yeah, it'll be so much fun to see Clemson over there on NBC. And of course, he'll be alongside Don Munson for the call, Reggie Merriweather as well. He is Tim Bourret. Tim, thank you again for sharing your experiences. We're going to have to validate if your registration at Notre Dame is actually valid, by proxy with your dad showing up. But other than that, man, safe travels, and we look forward to talking to you again next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and looking forward to reviewing the game, and then looking forward to Louisville, and actually next Thursday we'll look forward to the Clemson South Carolina basketball game.
No, it's hard to believe. Basketball season looming, and Clemson and South Carolina play early on this season. I think the second game for Clemson of the year. 803-450-0086. All right, so that's our interview that we did with Tim Bourret. Man, that is classic throwback. And again, I'm angry I didn't ask him yesterday, who do you love more? Who's in your heart? And if it goes by the same philosophy that our next guest's mom went with, which is Tommy Bowden's mom, she went with where the money came from. She was more Florida State than Clemson because that's where her husband, that's who signed his checks. Well, Clemson signed 40 plus years and continues to sign checks for Tim Bourret. So one would assume that there's a little more love. Well, they say you can't buy love, but I tell you what, 40 years worth of salary certainly helps for Clemson. Again, as the Tigers take on the Fighting Irish tomorrow at 7:30 on NBC. Should be a good one. All right, Tommy Bowden, just mentioned him. He's going to be joining us in hour 2. We'll find out. Has he ever coached a team or been a part of a team that's played in Notre Dame Stadium? Be interested to find that out. Stay with us.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set. Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan hanging out with you on a Friday. We got a chance to hear from Clemson Tom, Tommy Bowden coming up. Also reset some of our interview that we did with Tim Bourret a couple of days ago. So lots of great content here on the program. Hoping to get caught up with Luke Winstall. We'll have our prediction coming up on the back end of the program as well. 803-450-0086. It is Clemson Sports Talk right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. And out to the guest line we go. Tommy Bowden joins the show. Coach, welcome in. Hope you've had a great week. And I tell you, man, I don't know that there are many venues in college football nearly as hallowed as those up in South Bend, Indiana at Notre Dame Stadium.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know if you ever stand on that field and look at that tunnel and you see what they call touchdown Jesus, that view. You know, it's really that's got such a huge Catholic influence. There's so many Catholics in the country, and that's kind of the Catholic university. I know other schools are associated with Catholicism, but it's a great environment. Plus the great history of the school. It's kind of got a little bit of all the history of college football wrapped up in that one stadium.
Okay, so you kind of answered on accident, but didn't really answer for sure. So have you coached in that venue before, or just visited it, or give us some background?
No, when I was at Florida State, we played Notre Dame up there, and a guy named Jerry Faust. You remember him? Was the head coach?
I know the name.
Remember him at all? Well, yeah. Well, he was the head coach, but I was up there as a volunteer when I was at Florida State, graduate assistant. Went up there, played, and beat them at Notre Dame. But it's the locker room, just terrible facilities at that time. I don't know if they've improved them, but it's a really cramped facility for the visiting team.
Well, and you know what?
But yes.
Well, I was going to say, I thought the same thing, Coach, to be honest with you, when watching what happened with Michigan and Michigan State, and I thought about the Big House, and I looked, and it was built in like 1927. And, I mean, it's like the stadium was built for people to end up brawling afterwards with the way it's set up.
Well, back then, football was a little bit more, as they say, a part of the college experience instead of being the whole college experience. And there's not nearly as much at stake as there back then as there is now. But yeah, some of those older stadiums, the paths of the opposing team, cross either leaving or halftime or before the game or after the game. So it creates those rivalry games. It really gets heated. Of course, I've been in some not only at Clemson, South Carolina, but Florida State and Miami, and Florida State and Florida, and Alabama and Auburn. There's a lot of intensity, and boy, you put them close together in that kind of environment. Something's bound to happen.
Again, Tommy Bowden hanging out with us here on the program today as Clemson prepares to take on Notre Dame tomorrow night, 7:30 on NBC national television. A couple of years ago, this game took place, but fans couldn't be there basically because of COVID-19. There was just a handful of people in attendance, most of them Notre Dame students. DJ Uyunglele played great, Coach, in that game. But how big of an impact do you think a packed crowd could have on, his mindset going into tomorrow night's matchup?
One thing about that game, that should be great memories for him. I'm sure it is. His comfort zone playing them ought to be really, really high. I know he had a bad performance his last game, but anything about that game should bring back fond memories. Didn't he have just off the chart statistics in that game?
The 439 yards passing, the most ever against the Fighting Irish. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. So he's probably feeling pretty good about getting back in that environment.
We'll see what it looks like tomorrow. I know the wind and rain and all that might be a factor, but it doesn't look like temperature is going to be a big deal. I know you spent most of your career coaching in the South, but I mean, did you ever find that cold weather conditions, et cetera, had an impact on the game? Like we talk about it a lot with rain, but cold weather conditions, anything like that, just in your experience, is that something that brings you big concern as a coach at all?
It really does. And I tell you why, because I've always coached skill and I played receiver in college. I've coached defensive back, running backs, and wideouts. And, those are high maintenance. Those are like your foreign cars, your Mercedes, your BMWs, and all
right.
that. They're not like Chevys and Fords are made in the United States. They got to. You're worried about your skill guys overdressing with gloves and heavy clothing and all that, and really restricting their movement. And that's the one thing you really have to talk to your wide receivers about. Hey, it's going to heat up in the course of the game. Don't dress like it's freezing cold weather. And I think it's more of the skill guys, defensive backs and receivers, even running backs to some extent, overdressing for the cold weather, and it kind of restricting their movement. Those are light tail guys. They don't weigh very much. Those linemen, they like it. That's perfect for offensive, defensive line, but those skill guys, they're a little finicky. And if you're not careful, they really can restrict their movement, their dress.
Yeah, I would say Clemson is getting fortunate with what the temperature should be like. It looks like around 52 at game time. That's good football playing weather. Could have been a lot worse. And I was thinking, we've never actually talked about weather conditions because 9 times out of 10 in the ACC, it's pretty nice everywhere you go. So this would be one of the few games where you really have to consider it outside of maybe Boston College and Syracuse is indoors. So for Clemson, a rare November game north of the Mason-Dixon line, as they say.
Yeah, like you said, they're not experienced. That's one of the things. In that even at 52 degrees, I don't know if it's been 52 in Clemson yet. So a lot of those skilled guys at Clemson, it'll be their first exposure to let's just say a cold environment. Though 52 is not very. It'll be perfect for playing, but their initial reaction going out there in pregame warm-up is going to want to be have a lot of clothes on.
I guarantee you, Tommy Bowden is on Twitter at Tommy_Bowden. He joins us every Friday to talk a little bit about college football. And from that standpoint, Coach, Marcus Freeman is a new head coach. I think he's the right fit. I know it's still early on. They fought, though, down to the wire with Ohio State in game one, and then had a inexplicable loss to Marshall that I think kind of shocked people. They also lost to a pretty poor Stanford team as well. If you get the best of this Notre Dame team, this could be a heck of a ball game tomorrow night. But if you get the worst and Clemson plays good, I mean, this thing could get away from the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, it really could. When you look at their stats, Clemson right now is really, really good. Their run defense is, I think, they're giving up 87 yards per game. And Notre Dame's rushing for 186. That's kind of what gets them going. They've got to have their running game. And if Clemson can cut them 100 yards, hold them to 87 something yards, keep them under 100 yards, that's going to put a lot of pressure on them because it gets them out of their element, which is a heavy run action pass. And if they have to depend on the forward pass, then like you said, it could be a long night for Notre Dame. And right now, Clemson's strength is what Notre Dame has to have, that running game that they're averaging, I think, right at 186 yards per game.
And you've got a unique tie to this matchup as Chancey Stuckey is the wide receivers coach for the Fighting Irish. What do you recall about Chancey's time playing at Clemson for you and ultimately just, the type person that he is?
Great family, great person. I can remember recruiting him. We had to recruit him as a wide receiver, quarterback. I told him he could play quarterback. In my mind, man, I said, this guy will make a great wide receiver. But I had promised him that, and he played quarterback initially, but every day he was out there practicing. Man, we got to get him to the other side of the ball, but he has to make the decision. So we let him play quarterback, gave him an honest, fair shot at quarterback. I've never been happier in my life when he came in to see me and said, Coach, I'm ready to go to wide receiver. And consequently, not only was he a good wide receiver, he'll be an excellent wide receiver coach because he was a technician when he played. I think some of that quarterback experience he had coming up in his younger years really helped him play the wide receiver position. But he'll be a really good coach. I mean, their wide receivers will play well, especially against Clemson. But I can remember recruiting him and said, man, if we can just get him out wide where he can get the ball in his hands, he's really going to be something. And he was a really good college wide receiver. Had a good career in the NFL.
That's what I was about to say. Like, that's the other thing. I don't think if he had been quarterback, we would hear Chancey Stuckey selected, in the NFL draft. And that's the thing that he got a chance to do, got the chance to play with the Jets, the Browns, and the Cardinals in the NFL. So a part of that was your vision for what you saw from him. And obviously, just a humble guy too. I've had plenty of opportunities to spend time with Chancey, and I think Tiger Nation's really rooting for him. Spent some years on Coach Swanny's staff before going to Baylor, and now up there at Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman. As you look at the ground game for Notre Dame, you brought up 186 yards per game that they have done this season, and that's kind of where their bread is buttered. And this Clemson Tiger defensive line coach hasn't played up to the expectations I think that people had for them out of the gates. I know personally it feels like this would be a game where they're feeling challenged to show up and have a huge impact. When you've had kind of that good versus good in your career, and maybe you knew that you had the talent advantage, did you feel like your guys throughout your tenure kind of played up to the fact that, hey, this team is going to try to exploit, you guys as maybe not the weakness, obviously, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, Notre Dame's going to try to run the football between the tackles.
Oh, yeah, they have. They have to. And one thing I know you're familiar with. Brian Kelly. It's not like he lost because he left because he was losing.
Right.
I think they were in the college football playoffs, and so not only were they winning, but those players were heavily recruited. They're really good players. So I think this matchup between the Notre Dame offensive line, I know Coach Freeman's really going to challenge them physically because that's where they're going to have success. I've never really coached teams at Clemson that were talented as what Dabo's brought in. That's one of the things he's done. He's just elevated the talent level so high, and I'm sure those facilities has helped him do it, and winning has helped him do it. And Dabo is an excellent recruiter. He's hired great recruiters, so the talent level will still be in Clemson's favor, but it's not like they're going against chopped liver over at Notre Dame because Brian Kelly had great years. He was a good recruiter. Notre Dame is a great product to recruit to. So Clemson is going to see a very talented team Saturday, but again, Clemson is going to be more talented.
Do you think this is a positive or a negative? By the way, Tommy Bowden hanging out with us here on the program. So it tends to feel like when you watch football or cover teams, Coach, you talk about the quarterback, you talk about the running back, and then you can always identify like one or two other skill position players that just truly stand out. Clemson doesn't really have that this year, and it's kind of weird. Once you get past maybe DJ and Will Shipley, if you said to 100 people, if this is the Price or Family Feud, name the next guy, I mean, the answer is going to be all over the place because I can't really tell you who I think the next guy is. Like, I feel like it should be Bo Collins, but is that an advantage when a team is able to utilize so many players, or would you prefer as a coach to know, hey, this is our go-to guy?
Well, you can look at it two ways. This like another name that's Sammy Watkins. Boy, had him always making great plays. T. Higgins. You can go on down the line, and some of those names that really just jumped out at you. Any conversation was going to have to include them. And there's two ways to look at it. Number one, they don't have a Sammy Watkins or a T. Higgins, or they've got a bunch of guys right on the verge of being just as good or talented as some of those upper level players that are having great careers in the NFL. So it can be a good sign, and the fact that, man, he's got a bunch of really good guys, or the fact that they don't have a difference maker like they've had in the past. So I think right now the jury is still out. Is there a hidden gem in there that really hasn't jumped off the map at you and jumped off the tape and had great games as a wide receiver? Or all of them just really, really steady, solid receivers that you can win a bunch of games with? And it looks like at 8-0, they've got a good group of receivers that can win a lot of games for you if you just get in the ball, have a good system, have a good plan. They might not be as explosive as a Sammy Watkins, but they could surely get you to the college football playoffs.
And final thing, again, with Tommy Bowden here for you today, Coach, Michael Mayer, the tight end for Notre Dame, arguably outside of Brock Bowers at Georgia, might be one of the most skilled tight ends in college football. As a coach, what's your plan to try to slow down Notre Dame's ability to utilize Mayer on Saturday if you're coaching this Clemson team?
Well, the tight end could be a great asset to you, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's the lead receiver on their team. So, but I always thought it was easy for a defensive coordinator to really minimize the effectiveness of a tight end because his close proximity. He's not out there really, really wide. He's in there tight. There's more bodies in tight. You can get a smaller, faster linebacker on him, or a nickel back on that's going to be able to run with him in an open field. So I don't think the tight end will present as many problems. I think if Notre Dame has some great wideouts, maybe some great running backs that can really make you single up that tight end and double up on these other guys. But I don't think there's that skill level offensively. And I just think it's easier to take a tight end away. I don't think Clemson's defensive coordinator is going to have a hard time developing a plan to minimize that guy's effectiveness Saturday night.
Clemson is a 3.5-point favorite over the Fighting Irish on the road. Coach, it sounds like you feel pretty good about Clemson's chances in this matchup.
Yeah, I think Clemson Dabo does a great job of getting those guys, getting his players ready mentally for big games. Notre Dame's not having a great year, but it's a nationally televised game. They know what they have to do. Maybe the most talented team they'll play from here on out for the rest of the year on their schedule. So he does a great job of getting his players ready to play that game. And he knows they've got an 11-1 Tennessee, an 11-1 Alabama, an 11-1 Georgia. You know, he's going to have to go undefeated. So he knows that. And he does a great job of getting his team ready for a game like this. So I think they'll be ready. Yeah, I think it'll be more than 3, but those bookies are pretty smart.
Well, Coach, look, enjoy the weekend. I know Dabo said he realized his TV had a feature where he could put 4 games up at once, and my only thought was a man with a $115 million contract, he's only got 1 television. We got to get more TVs in there, Coach.
he's got a television in his bathroom where a toilet is and everything else. He got so many television in the house. He don't know which one to watch.
I heard Tommy Bowden's on Twitter at Tommy_Bowden. Coach, have a great weekend. Enjoy the college football, and we'll talk to you next Friday.
It should be a great game. Enjoy it.
There he is, former Clemson Tiger head coach Tommy Bowden here on a Friday afternoon. Yeah, that was the funny thing. I mean, again, I can only assume that Dabo Swinney has DirecTV or whatever, but wouldn't you think somewhere in his house there's a wall of TVs? Like I would have that. Like I don't need probably. I mean, if I'm gonna really invest in a college football weekend, and it's not like Dabo's got to invest in weekends, but I would have, let's say, 6 75-inch TVs, all with their own tuner. I mean, like you know, like you're walking around going, "Oh man, the DirecTV bill. I gotta get on YouTube TV. I gotta find the next free promo. I gotta save $1." I mean, why is Dabo splitting the big question is, why is Dabo Swinney splitting screens? The man should have screens all over the room. I agree with Tommy Bowden. All over the house, screens in the toilet, wherever he is, there should be a TV. Just a wall of televisions. All right, we'll hit a break. We'll come back with more right here on a Friday afternoon. It's Clemson Sports Talk on Fox Sports Radio 1400. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk, Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. We podcast every episode of the program. And, of course, Luke Winstall covers recruiting for us over on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Luke, I know you've been out on the recruiting scene the past couple of weeks. Going to head over and see Clemson commit Jamal Anderson tonight, man. Welcome in, and certainly appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be a part of the show.
Of course, Lawton. As always, thank you for having me on. Glad to join you.
Yeah, look, okay, let's start with we'll get to Clemson Notre Dame. I mean, obviously that's the elephant in the room on the show today, but I want to begin with last weekend. You had a chance to go see Vic Burley, Clemson commit on the defensive line play. For those Tiger fans that maybe have only seen him virtually, you know, what did you make seeing him in person of the type player that Clemson's getting in Burley?
Well, I love Vic Burley, Lawton. I think if you were to look and take a screenshot of our chat last week over text, the word freak comes to mind. And I think I texted you, he's a freak, about 5 times, because you look in warm-ups and you see this game in Central Georgia where there's some good football. They grow some big players. They've got some big guys in that area. So Burley is playing against the Jones County team that is about middle of the pack in terms of middle Georgia football. They've got a 5-star receiver. They've got some high-end talent around the program, a 3-star quarterback. The offense has been good. And you look at Vic Burley is just a wrecking ball to any offense, especially at the high school level. He's long. You can move him inside, outside. He single-handedly gave one of Jones County's guards just a nightmare type of game, because Burley single-handedly was throwing aside offensive linemen to blow up run plays. He was coming around the edge, providing pressure. He overall, on one play, got in the backfield, picked up the quarterback, and body slammed a 6'6" quarterback over his shoulder. So when you look at Burley, those are the things that stand out. That is not the first body slam he's had. The Warner Robins crowd on their sideline was not surprised to see it. I was over there like, man, that's so cool. And for them, they're almost, it's normal to them. It's not that impressive because he does it all the time. He's very aggressive. And the biggest thing is going to be Clemson developing his body. As soon as they continue to, Burley's up to 300 pounds. That's good. You want him around that 6'5", 300 range, but continuing to add muscle, build out his frame. He's still got some filling out, especially in terms of the, kind of upper body muscle that he can do. So you look at Burley and there's just so much potential for him to be that next disruptor that Clemson fans fall in love with.
He's on Twitter at Luke Winstel. He's joining us here on the program, talking a little Clemson recruiting. So from that side of the football, we'll stay, I guess, with Jamal Anderson, whose father, people will know, was the creator of the Dirty Bird dance in Atlanta. He is a versatile linebacker. You're going to go see him tonight. What do you hope to see from Anderson?
Yeah, I saw Jamal play back in his first game of the season when they opened up in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta in the Corky Co Classic. And the thing that stands out about Jamal, he's athletic, he's long, he's rangy, fits the mold physically of when you think Power 5 linebacker or Clemson linebacker, fits some of that mold of just the physical tools are there. I saw him get into a situation where his team was down late, looking to rally, 4th down, says, put me in, coach, and goes in at tight end on the offensive side and makes the first down catch on a drag route.
Wow.
And he's the type that has that mentality. He's been around the game, obviously, with his dad. He knows what it takes, and it's very clear that he understands and has the IQ to play, and not just to be a part of Clemson's defense, but someone that we could look to as a future leader as he develops at Clemson. And that's part of the reason that the Tigers are so excited to have him in that class.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear how he performs tonight. And again, it's hard to believe. Are they already in the playoffs in Georgia, or is this still regular season? Do you know?
Not yet. We're just tying up some loose ends. Last game of the regular season, finishing up all the region seedings, and then we'll have brackets out over the weekend, and then we get into some crazy playoff type stuff coming up.
Well, I know, Luke, you've been over in Athens all week. That game started as number 1 Georgia versus number 2 Tennessee, and then the college football playoff rankings came out, and now it's number 1 Tennessee versus number 3 Georgia. What's the buzz in Athens been like over the past week?
Man, it's like nothing I've ever seen before, really, because it's been a few years since there's been a home game of this magnitude here that people have been able to go to. It's been since before the COVID period, really, that there's been the home game quite like this. And in terms of rankings, people would tell you there really hasn't been one in the history of Sanford Stadium. So the vibe is on a Friday. It is packed. It's been loaded here. Everyone's stopping by the stadium, and they've got the gates open to where you can go in its own deck. And popped in there yesterday and saw that they'd painted the signatures of Vince Dooley and Charlie Trippi, two former members of the Georgia program that have passed away, and they're looking to pay tribute to them. They had a flyover practice today at Sanford Stadium. So things are really the energy, the buzz. I think some of it is a bit of an anxious buzz, just knowing that Tennessee is the hot team on the block coming in. And people know Georgia has the talent to compete, but really been tough to get on Tennessee this year. And obviously no one's been able to beat them yet.
Again, he is on Twitter at Luke Winstel. Luke, final thing, we only got about a minute, so it'll have to be quick. Clemson and Notre Dame, what's your take on this matchup? It feels like Clemson's last really big hurdle.
It does. That's one of those where you feel like you make it through, and it's been fantastic for you, I think, in terms of the matchup. I would personally predict Clemson by 2 touchdowns, if not a little more than that, just because they outmatch Notre Dame. I don't see many matchups that you look at position group versus position group. I don't see a lot that I would just hand to Notre Dame. So Clemson, I feel like, as the deeper team at this point in the season, is one that will handle it. I think 2 touchdowns or more is the type of line that I would look for.
Luke, man, safe travels. Enjoy your time over there covering Jamal Anderson tonight. And everybody go follow Luke on Twitter right now. He's at Luke Winstel. And if you can't find him, you could certainly get to him over on our website. Got the link to his Twitter as well. Go check it out. Luke, man, be good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lawton. Have a great one.
Again, follow Luke on Twitter at Luke Winstall. With a quick break, we'll bounce back. I can't wait to hear his write-ups on Jamal Anderson. We'll have that for our premium subscribers. Subscribe today for $1 over on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Again, that was Luke Winstall before the break. Tommy Bowden, Clemson Tom, Tim Bourret. Been a loaded day. Loaded day. The Tigers have arrived in South Bend. They took their walkthrough earlier today at the stadium, just kind of checking all out the sights and sounds. One of the most historic venues in all of college football, maybe in all of American sports. And that would be a good poll. Like, where does Notre Dame Stadium rank in terms of all of American sports? I think a part of it comes down to Rudy. The movie, by the way, Rudy Was Offside's t-shirts. I expect to have those shortly. I was hoping we'd have them out and mailed to you by now, but so it goes. We also play Notre Dame next season, so you'll have plenty of time to wear the shirt and enjoy it. It is awesome. 803-450-0086. You can check that shirt out on our website. Don't forget Clemson Tiger men's soccer tomorrow in the ACC tournament at Duke. Sunday night at Duke. Tomorrow, the Clemson Tigers and the Fighting Irish at 7:30 on NBC. But that's not the only game going on in the world of college football. Obviously, this time of the year, as we get into the championship phase, I mean, this is when push comes to shove and the cream begins to rise to the top, as they say in the business. And obviously, nothing like a good coach cliche here on the program for you. But, I mean, that's where we are. Like, for Clemson, at this point, look, man, you go into this ball game tomorrow and get a win, and you are sitting extremely pretty for making a run at the college football playoff. Matter of fact, I was on the Fan Upstate yesterday, and Mark Ryan asked me, what are my percentage? And I kind of misunderstood the question. But like, what are the odds that the ACC champ is undefeated and the Big Ten champ is undefeated, so on and so forth. And, I think just kind of looking at it, and I said 100%, like just thinking, okay, if my belief is that Clemson wins the ACC, and it is, yeah, I think they're going to be undefeated and win it. If I think Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten, then yeah, I think they're going to be undefeated. Do I think TCU wins the Big 12 and goes undefeated? I don't know that I'm buying in yet on TCU. I probably give them like a 65% chance. Maybe a little less than that. And then in the SEC, I think you could easily have that 3-card Monty where, Georgia gets beat this weekend by Tennessee or vice versa. Then Alabama beats that team in the SEC championship. And then you got 3 one-loss teams from the SEC. But I just don't think that all 3 will get in. I really don't believe that. I think the SEC's perception of itself is greater than the outside world's perception. I think it's greater than the perception of the College Football Playoff Committee, because I think there is that understanding of something I bring up here all the time. Like, you play in one conference and play just a handful of games out of conference. So to try to justify that 3 of your teams are 3 of the top 4 in all of college football is nearly impossible. I would argue it is impossible because the sample size is too small. You just say, well, but we beat this team, and that's a good team. Do we? So I think at best the SEC is going to get 2 teams in. One of these teams is going to be on the outside if it's a 3-way with 3 teams with 1 loss each. Here's a rundown of the games we put on the slate, on the schedule to watch tomorrow. We give you 10 games every week over on our social media account. They make an excellent wallpaper for your phone as well. On ABC at noon, number 2, Ohio State's at Northwestern. On Fox at noon, you got Texas Tech at TCU. On CBS at 3:30, the Tennessee Volunteers taking on the Georgia Bulldogs. Also at 3:30 on the Big Ten Network, Michigan State's at Illinois. ESPN, 7 o'clock, Alabama at LSU. Hard to believe that Alabama and LSU and also Florida State and Miami are seemingly overlooked at this point. That Alabama-LSU game, though, is a top 10 matchup. Can the Bayou Bengals keep it interesting? That's 7 o'clock on ESPN. Also at 7, you got Texas at Kansas State on FS1. And at 7:30, your Clemson Tigers at Notre Dame on the NBC. South Carolina also at 7:30 at Vanderbilt. Again, I think it's a must-win game for South Carolina. I don't think they make a bowl. If they lose that game somehow, they're not going bowling. And what a fall that would be. 7:30 on ABC, Florida State and Miami. Not a soul talking about that one. And 8 o'clock, Wake Forest and NC State, a couple of top 25 teams in the ACC, squaring off on the ACC network. So again, it's not a great weekend, quite frankly, especially the early time slot. Like that was my big takeaway putting together our schedule. I mean, there's just not a lot of great in that early window. But at 3:30, once Tennessee and Georgia get going on CBS, after that, I mean, it's a loaded afternoon of college football. By the way, last night, Coastal Carolina beat App State 35-28. The Chanticleers got the victory in that one. Chase Bryce, though, for App State threw for 279 yards in the game. Also, last night, Rice beat UTEP 37-30. Tonight at 7 o'clock, it'll be UMass at UConn on the CBS Sports Network. Also at 7, a little ACC action as Duke is at Boston College on ESPN2. At the conclusion of that game, they'll switch you over to number 23 Oregon State, the Beavers, at the Washington Huskies, 10:30 also on ESPN2. So that's a quick look at some of the upcoming matchups. Again, our prediction on the Tigers and the Fighting Irish when we get back here on the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk on the Friday edition as we get you out of here. And again, you can join us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on our website. With the .com on it, doggone it. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back to put a bow on the show.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Friday. Clemson Sports Talk, your Tigers 3.5-point favorites. I think it started as 4.5-point favorites on the road at Notre Dame. So, a couple of thoughts on this, really. Number one, I think one thing we've seen, I've talked a lot about DJ and Will Shipley and those two guys being playmakers. And outside of that, you don't really know who's next. Well, certainly Phil Maffa is emerging, which is big. I mean, he's looked really good. He's looked the part. So minus Kobe Pace, who's still out, that's a big deal. Number two, it's obvious Antonio Williams is becoming a bigger part of the series or the system for Clemson, which is beneficial to everybody, because you go from feeling like you have to kind of eyeball Bo Collins to now, is Williams Clemson's top target? And if he is, does that allow Bo to emerge? And if it does, then what does that do for Joe Ngata and Adam Randall, the tight ends, and maybe even EJ Williams, who I think we used in at least one of our graphics this week. EJ's sort of been a non-factor for Clemson this year. But if you go back and think about his freshman season against Notre Dame, I mean, EJ Williams in the ACC championship, had a pretty decent performance. Williams finished that game with four catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, as Clemson beat the then number 2 ranked Fighting Irish 34-10. And so with that emergence, Adam Randall having another week to get healthy, the tight ends, Brenning Stool and Davis Allen, like Clemson's weapons that they can go to, I think are the defining reason why you don't have a number 3. And that's a credit to DJ for spreading the ball out. And the more you do that, the more you keep defenses honest. And I think that certainly helps Clemson. The other thing, too, is Notre Dame has been terrible defensively in the red zone. And Clemson's been one of the best teams in America in that statistical category. So it does kind of lend you to believe that if Clemson can get down there, you got BT Potter to clean up, any chip shot field goals, really any probably from 50 and in field goals you feel very comfortable with. And quite frankly, if the Tigers had to tee up 53, 55, as long as the wind's not like blowing in his face, I'd give Potter a good shot to make it. And so you throw all that into the bag of tricks and you feel like offensively Clemson's going to be the better team. Drew Pine's coming on, but Notre Dame, they want to run the football. And they want to be run first. And if you can't ever truly establish the run, then it sure does make moving the football and being successful in that capacity more and more difficult. And I just think that's what you're going to see. I don't think it's necessarily the irresistible force meets the immovable object a la Gorilla Monsoon. But I do think that Notre Dame is going to hit an immovable object, and that's going to be that Clemson defensive front that runs about eight deep. And I think the Avengers, Thor and the Hulk and Hawkeye and everybody, I think they're just going to all keep coming. Iron Man. And with that, I think the Tigers come away with a victory. Like I can't really think of a scenario outside of Clemson turning the ball over where I would shift into a mindset of, hey, I think Notre Dame wins this game. If you come at me with a stat and say, Swanny, Clemson's going to turn it over 3 times, not force any turnovers, do I think they can overcome a -3 deficit in the turnover margin against Notre Dame like they did against Syracuse? I do not. But I don't think they're going to get themselves in that situation. And I'm still banking at some point. I'm still banking on a Nate Wiggins pick 6 this year. I don't know when it's going to come. I said before that I think he's going to get it in the regular season. I may have included the ACC championship. I honestly can't remember. This might be an opportunity for him, though. Drew Pine, not with the strongest arm I've seen. If he puts one out there in the flats and Wiggins gets a break on it, it's going to be an orange 6 on it in a hurry. I think it's tough to digest how this game goes, though, final score-wise. I mean, can Clemson creep into the 30s? Sure. Could they hold Notre Dame, under 14? Possibly. But I think it probably falls somewhere right along that line. So that's why I'm going to take Clemson to get the JOBDONE, the job done, to the tune of 31-14. I think Clemson walks away from the Fighting Irish in South Bend, Indiana, and brings home another victory to move to 9-0 on the season. Again, 31-14 Clemson. We got to get out of here. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, as always, y'all take care now. And go Tigers!